when your intention is like you have one party sort of snickering in the background of how bad can we make this rollout be, it's going to be pretty bad.
Right.
And that's what we're seeing. And now the same party that didn't want the thing in the first place, that didn't want people signing up, is now crying foul that people can't sign up.
Right.
Part of the issue though is that they did some pretty bad front end IT stuff in regards to not having any adequate beta testing. Where like sorry to bring up Google Plus, but Google Plus rolled out to a select group of people that then got to invite some of their friends to join, so they could sort out what the bugs were. And then once those were fished out after a few months, then the bugs were fixed. Then the whole thing was released to the open public. They should have done some kind of controlled release so they could have figured out some of this stuff. There's no way you can stress test, a 250,000 people trying to access something at one time. That there's nothing from a historical perspective to allow them to believe, or even to have an ability to do it that way. Even Romney was poorly in the front end, especially with the traffic. They got bottlenecked the same way. Granted, they should have learned from Romney Care's mistakes, but at the same time, they used the same IT firm that rolled out Medicare Part B. So, at some point, you got to say, what do you expect? The other thing is, at what point does the federal government stop just hiring companies that are just getting federal contracts? Like this company ended up subbing out the majority of the work anyway, and they're not an native company, or they're not a website native company. So at some point, you got to say, I need a web developer, not an IT company. Right? They just did the whole thing backwards from the go, and then instead of trying to address the flaws in the policy itself and the flaws in the rollout, that Republicans will attack anything they can, and it sucks to have to watch this happen. I hope they can fix it quick, because if they can't, you can see again if you look at how awful Republican policies are, but how united they seem to be. But look how splintered the Democrats become in just a few days. The shutdown just ended Thursday. Now here we are. It's just a week away. The Democrats are already splitting how unacceptable this and that are. They're writing letters and crap. It's really unfortunate.
Right. Wholeheartedly agreed, but I'm hesitant to describe the party as splintering right off. I see a lot of gnawing on the bones of certain Democrats. Kirsten Sinema, for example, has roundly gotten her behind chewed out by sort of the far left of the base, who is irate that she would do anything resembling voting with the other side ever at all. Like, there are people calling for a primary on her, and enough. And maybe I've missed something in the news cycle, but a lot more of what I've seen has been, outrage on the part of people like Nancy Pelosi, on the part of people like Patty Murray. Even the president at this point looks kind of fairly well disgusted with what he has to work with from the other side of the aisle, that there is no such thing as compromise anymore, not in any real sense.
Well, actually, is drafting legislation trying to get the individual mandate part delayed for a year. That's the kind of stuff. There's another woman. Her name's escaping me at the moment. She wrote a letter to the president either yesterday or today that was basically hounding him for what happened and demanding answers and things like that. That's what I mean by surprise.
Gotcha. Yeah. What happened, God? There is some of that. And I think there will always be some of that in terms of just the raw foolishness of some of the things that we try to do. Like, it's the problem that we just discussed a minute ago of we want to speak in dissertations, and we, on top of that, want every single person in the party to have their own little version of why they're right. Mm-hmm. Like, the left sort of does this stupid thing where it's not good enough for us to be able to sort of have a central point and tenet that we all rally around and drive that one talking point. So we end up instead doing this foolish thing where we're around in circles with one another, and it's a circular firing squad. Like, it's no longer a movement going in one direction.
Yeah.
Hang on one second. Yay, technology.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was trying to explain to somebody how to watch. But on that splintering, I mean, what do you think we should or could do to correct that? I mean, does that start with the grassroots? Does that start with leadership? Like, who does that lift to sort of combat that?
I think it's a combination of both. One, again, the way the Democrats were able to come out ahead on the shutdown issue is by simply staying united on the topic at hand, no splintering. But again, like I said a minute ago, I think they lose sight of what their objectives are. I guess they keep thinking, if we play nice this time, so will they. So that's what I mean. They definitely get fine. But the flip side is that I think activists like us need to constantly remind them, we didn't send you there to help enact Republican policy. 60 million people didn't vote for Obama to have the losing side's agenda be enacted. I mean, we wanted Obamacare to work. We expect you to make it happen. We don't expect you to go ahead and say the very thing that Republicans are saying anyway. I mean, Joe Manchin's his own little nightmare with gun crap that he's into, but I think it's disingenuous when when Democrats forget who they are. They simply forget there's a D in front of their name for a reason. We don't need to pretend like you are best buds with Republicans just so you don't get trashed from Fox News. Right? You need to go ahead and say stuff like Alan Grayson. I mean, whether or not you think the KKK thing was cool thing or not, I thought it was adequate.
Well, I like what Grayson said about our state representative Brenna Barton, who compared President Obama to Hitler.
Right.
There's at least a thread of truth in what Alan Grayson said, because you can Google image the Tea Party rallies and protests and the signs they hold up of the president with a phone in his nose and the N-word, and I mean, come on, they do look like Klan rallies. I mean, let's be honest. So it's not Alan Grayson was not out of line in what he said.
No.
Even if he was
not scared to say those kinds of things. I'm not saying they need to be extremist or make stuff up, but they need to grow a spine and act like our cause counts.
Well, and Don, I mean, you and I have had this conversation about local politics and this spinelessness of the left. We're going to get hammered for this anyway. There is no reality in which the Republicans are going to return the favor of us having been nice to them. Like, it's not going to happen.
Right.
If we're going to pay this political cost, if we're going to pay and be painted as liberals, if we're going to pay the price of they're going to raise your taxes and they're going to cut defense and they're going to do this and they're going to do that, we'll do it. I mean, we might as well get something out of it because we're going to have to pay for it anyhow. Like, it's the voter registration numbers, Donna, of we don't lose elections because liberals sit home.
Right, yeah, and especially in Arizona. I mean, and this is one of my biggest criticism of the party. I think the party takes a lot of flack for stuff that frankly isn't their fault.
Yeah.
Because the Republican Party here is the disaster. So if it was simply a matter of Arizona Democrats versus Arizona Republicans, and it was pure, and all our elections purely came down to who was a more organized, tidier party that worked harder and raised more money and got along better, and all that, the Democrats would never lose elections here. Okay? But one thing I think the Democrats have kind of been really blasé about is our abysmal registration numbers. I mean, we have more registered independents in Arizona than we have Democrats. So those, like the Republicans have the most, and then independents, and then Democrats like a distant third. That's like ridiculous. That's unacceptable. And I just think, especially in an off year like this, our number one focus should be increasing the number of Democrats. And it's not like we don't have we're not Idaho. I mean, there's not going to be a Democratic majority in Idaho for a long, long time. But we're not Idaho, okay? We have the demographics where we could really increase our registration numbers and our turnout. Of all the states in the West that Obama lost, he did the best here. He got 45% of the vote. 45% of people here voted for Obama in 2012. And think about that. In Arizona, where in our media here, the man is relentlessly trashed. I mean, he can't come out here ever to do a big rally for anyone. He comes out for fundraisers or to do a speech or something. But remember who came out for Arizona are willing to vote Democratic no matter what. And all we have to do is get 6% more to vote our way in statewide elections and in some of these more competitive legislative and congressional districts. Well, we did succeed in that in the Congress this last time. We could be doing a lot better in Arizona, but I think it does start with increasing our voter registration. And I'll get off my soapbox now.
Because there is that, and there is like having to find a way to win the independents. But
I just think if we had more Democrats, we wouldn't have to mess around with the independents. The independents, I mean, if we bring out our base, and we have our base really energized, and we have a big enough base to be, what the Republicans have here is 40% of voters identifying as conservative, who will vote Republican no matter what. So they're starting from that advantage. We only have 20% of our voters who identify as liberal. So we do have to get a lot of moderates, but we already win the moderates. We usually get 60% of the moderate vote here, and that's based on exit polls. So we just need to do a little bit better than them, and we just need to increase our voter numbers overall.
Now, what I want to know is there are states like Wisconsin that are going the other way, and what in the hell is happening? Like, is this a related problem? Like, are we screwing something up nationally, or is it just combined laziness on the part of the left? Like, what are we getting wrong? Like, how did you end up with Walker twice? Like, how did he survive that recall?
Well, I mean, that's a little bit of a misnomer there. So I guess you have to, in order to answer that question, you have to go back a little bit further. And I'm not an expert on Scott Walker. I mean, I know some of the awful things that he's done, but I mean, there are consultants who could dissect the issue further. But so I'm going to give you my the dummies view of what happened. So Scott Walker campaigned on a platform that was not the platform he actually enacted once he was elected. He didn't mention going after pensions or unions, because that's a non-electable issue. You cannot run that way. Whether you couldn't in 2010.
I bet he didn't bring up like abortion in the general campaign either, did he?
No.
Of course not. But the first thing they do when they get in office is start passing laws on it.
Yeah. So I think so. He ran on a platform that was a little bit different, and at the time we were. Mayor Barrett was weaker at the time relative to Scott Walker's rising star, but at the same time he was getting so much money from outside donors that it was unreal. I believe the majority of his campaign contributions came from out of state, so that helped him there. But the recall is different. What happened there is that more voters were simply pissed off about the recall itself, and simply turned off by the recall, that either they didn't come out and vote, or they just said, I'm just going to vote Walker and get this over with. So it's not like it was a ringing endorsement or there was a mandate issued.
Right, because I remember the night of the election they did an exit poll, and they said that something like most of the voters in the recall were going to vote for Obama in 2012. like 60% of people who voted in the recall said they were going to vote for Obama in 2012, but they voted for Walker to keep him in office because, like you said, they didn't like the recall. Yeah.
You know, so people were really pissed off about the recall. It cost a ton of money to do it. I think the sad part to that is that, you know, for one, people who were not Scott Walker, supporters who ended up voting for him anyway because they were just angry, did us and themselves a severe disservice in that they made him feel like he was so empowered and emboldened now that I've been elected twice. And they came after me again, and the second time he actually got more votes than he did in his actual election. That is not cool. But I think he's going to have a harder time with his actual re-election in 2014, given that the state is so evenly split between those that support him and those that don't. And because it's split like that, there's a chance that he could be beaten. But I think he's going to have to track so far right to retain his seat and his support that he's going to actually defeat himself. I mean, there's only so far you can go with voters until you start to exclude people who have actually supported you, who are more closer to the center than they are extremists one way or the other.
So, do you think it's a good tactic in general to try to remind people, like, hey, by the way, remember when the Republicans said jobs, 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 and you got abortion, 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 and a government shutdown, and no health care, and education cuts, and tax cuts for the wealthy, and.
Well, so in 2010, which was a bloodbath for the Democrats nationwide, there were a couple races where Democrats actually won by doing just what you said, Joe. And especially in Colorado, they won the governor's race and Senate race there because they ran relentlessly on their opponents' anti-choice stances. And you know, the really hardcore, you know, no abortion for rape victims and what have you. And most of them have that position, you know, even the nice-seeming ones. And when the Democrats ran aggressively on that issue, they won. I mean, they ran ads. They had ads of the guy, one of them was Ken Buck, saying really awful things about abortion and awful things about women. And they just hammered him on it. And I think a lot of Democrats, I think we learned in 2012 that that's a winning issue for us. But back even as recently as 2010, a lot of Democrats were kind of squeamish about it. It's such controversial, you know, really weenies about it, not wanting to take it on, you know, with both hands. But I think hopefully we move beyond that, and we better run on abortion.
Right. Well, actually, I wouldn't say run on abortion, but run on the issue of choice. I mean, I don't believe people are going to actually say, I'm not pro abortion. I'm definitely pro choice, though. I mean, it's kind of hard that you have the Party of Freedom running on an anti-choice issue. You know, I don't see how that anyone can square that as much as they. So the same Party for Freedom wants to prevent a woman from choosing, but then there's also for the death penalty. I mean, that whole thing doesn't work out. I think people need to be reminded about those severe inconsistencies, and not only that, but how, again, the Party of Freedom is trying to prevent a person from exercising their rights, whether it's abortion, whether it's the way that you want to love someone. You know, I can't imagine in 2013, almost 2014, that we have a government trying to prevent people from marrying. That to me is crazy. And I'm sure in the 60s, people were saying, can't believe it's 1963 and black people don't have the ability to, you know, conduct themselves the same way white people do. I mean, the issue will progress, but I think people need to be reminded, not just at election time, but constantly, about how just evil that kind of mentality is, how suppressive that kind of mentality is. And
the Republicans the conservative, reactionary Republicans, they want to repeal the 20th century, basically. They want to just, all that civil rights and women's suffrage nonsense. Let's just erase the entire 20th century and go back to, 1892 when things were awesome for some people, right?
For 5 of them.
Yeah.
It's But let me play devil's advocate for a minute here. We already all know negative campaigning drives down voter turnout. Democrats do worse in that environment. Do we really want to pick that up and swing and run hard on a negative message?
It's not negative.
It's the truth. And again, it depends. I mean, my opponent is a low-down, yellow-bellied scoundrel kind of stuff. That may dampen enthusiasm, but, you know, here's a clip of my opponent saying that rape victims' bodies shut down pregnancy. You know? That worked.
Right. You know, negative is saying, you know, that creepy ad with the Uncle Sam and the stirrups and the clamp thing, that's negative because it's dishonest. And
right.
It's not like, you know, you're not...
Remember the ads they did against cinema, right? All the Republican ads in 2012? I mean, it was like 180, if you were here at Kari in Arizona, in the Phoenix market, the ads they ran against Kirsten Cinema were unbelievable. And they were like 187,000 times a day. You were reminded what a radical, commie, housewife-hating space cadet Kirsten Cinema was. And I kind of think that kind of negative, I think that actually did turn voters off. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of voters were like, you know what, I get your point, but, you know, go away, and they just didn't believe it, you know?
Yeah. There's that. There's also the media issue of nobody gets called out for a lie anymore.
Right.
Is that too far for us to go?
No. I mean, the fact that Chuck Todd flat out said it, it's not my job to fact check the people that he interviews. I mean, I can imagine, you know, Walter Cronkite being able to say something as dumb as that. I would think Walter's probably flipping over in his grave right now if they hear some dumb comment like that. But you see how different the dichotomy between, you know, how Bill Maher, I'm not saying he's a journalist necessarily, but how he interacts with his guests when he has them on the show. If someone says something that he believes is a lie, he's going to call it out on. Or the way that Thomas Roberts had handled Reince Priebus a week ago, which I thought was awesome. That's the way I think it should be done, but that's not what's happening. I think, you know, the way the media is actually moving, they're slightly shifting, you know, ever so greatly towards the right. And I think it's unfortunate. I mean, you want to have some, like Rachel, who will be steadfast Democrats while tracking that far, but you get people like Chuck Todd who have such a wide audience.
Yes.
He's not called out on for the stuff that he does. Or look at, what's his name, that Meet the Press.
David Gregory.
Yeah.
David Gregory is a closet conservative.
Right. I'm just mind-boggled at some of the stuff. And his counterparts are not calling him out. Rachel should say, look, you have got to stop doing this shit. Sorry, pardon my language, but you can't do this. Same thing with Chuck Todd. You have got to stop doing that. I don't need you to sit and pat my back or kiss Obama's ass all the time. I don't need that. But I do need you to be honest and say, well, look, you know, the stuff that they are saying, this is a lie, and here's why. Now, explain why you're lying to me about X, Y, and Z.
Right.
I don't mind if you want to be fair and balanced and hit Obama where be like, you know, as much as PolitiFact may be wrong in some cases, at least they try to fact check everybody.
And I think that fair and balanced claim, like the media has sort of, I'm not sure when it happened, but it definitely did, there was no longer, you know, fair and balanced meant you were equally tough on both sides, and fair meant you called lies lies and you called truth truth, whether they were convenient for anybody or not, and turned into treating both sides equally.
Yeah, always looking for a false balance. Like, the right is totally lying, but you'll find that one thing that a Democrat said that was sort of not exactly correct, and then it's, oh my God, both sides are equally bad.
Right. And sort of the $64,000 question becomes, we activists, we the party, we politicos can't control the media as much as the right wing thinks we do. all we can control is our own candidates, our own movements, our own social media, like channels like ta-da, this.
And we still have Hollywood.
Is that something? Could that be a winning message for Democrats to run on? Of look, they promised you jobs, and they would repeal Obamacare, and they would get all this stuff done, and they had a better plan, and they shut down the government and cost us billions of dollars to get absolutely, positively nothing. They are liars, throw them out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, does that play? Is that, do we want to go for the torches and pitchforks in that way?
I think you have to. I honestly think you have to. I mean, because you gotta consider the counter reality to this. If Republicans had something like they do with Obamacare, they're not going to let that go. We need something that we can hang their cause against. And you can't sit and say I'm a fiscal conservative, but then I'm going to go ahead and waste $24 billion, and you cannot do that. And what's sad about it is that they have now been given license, despite how bad their poll numbers are. They believe they have the chance to do it again in January, and then there's no consequence for it. It's just like with a kid. If you let them continue to get away with something, they're going to continue to try to get away with it. At some point, Democrats have got to say, enough is enough. I mean, we've tried to play nice. And just like with Obama negotiating over the fiscal cliff in 2011, he learned the hard way there. You cannot win with these people. I mean, we didn't elect you to make nice with them. We elected you to govern the country the way that you promised to. And at some point, either they, I hate to say something that a Tea Partier might say, but at some point, either they do their job or they'll find someone else that will.
You are kind of sounding awfully close to the Grover Norquist school of politics. I don't need you to think. I need you to have enough working digits to sign the papers.
I don't need it in that regard. What I'm saying is, if you say, "Here's the things I'm going to do," I expect you to do them. I don't expect you to say, "I'm going to run on a Democratic platform and I'm going to do X, Y, and Z." But then it's the first chance of struggle. I'm going to kowtow and then take whatever the Republicans demand that I do. I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with the fact that after 20 little kids getting murdered, still don't have sensible gun laws. They just cowered away from that. And then, you just had a shooting today, and another shooting a couple days ago. At some point, that's got to change. But you keep seeing Democrats just giving in. No different than with the.
But did we really give in on that? Like on gun control, we got the vote. We just lost.
But right now, with the problem I think that we have with the gun control issue is that the Democrats didn't make the argument to people. No different than how the Democrats took the argument about the shutdown to the people and hammered it. These Republicans are doing X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Here's how they're screwing up this. Here's how they're screwing up that. So many people afraid of going up against the NRA that even the Manchin Toomey bill was authored in part by NRA guys in the same room. You cannot let that happen. That's not. I'm not a Democrat/Republican. I'm a Democrat. Either you're going to be Democrats, and I don't mind compromise, but at some point, compromise, as it exists right now, is basically accepting Republican mantra. That's what it's become. And I don't think that's a good thing.
At this point, I have a problem with compromise because we Democrats, we the left, seem to have this knee-jerk need to, they offer us anything, and we're ready to avoid a disaster and bring everybody to the table and have a deal, and it's great, and government works, and I wonder how much more of a beating the party is going to take, and how much more of a beating our electeds are going to take before they wake up and realize that, the people you are negotiating with are not negotiating back with you.
Well, I tell you, if I may interject, I'm seeing some hopeful signs. Okay, did you notice that Harry Reid appointed Bernie Sanders to the committee?
Yes.
To be Paul Ryan's basically counterpart on our side? That was a giant, basically, F you to Paul Ryan to me. And I just was like, totally blown away by that. And that was really a strong signal to me that, and he was also asked today about, again, entitlement cuts, and he said, you know what, I don't even want to hear about it. I don't even want to hear about entitlement. I mean, really solid no to entitlement cuts in this next round of negotiations. So some of them are clearly getting the message that, okay, we've tried this compromising and it hasn't been working. So, no, we're gonna make them come to us this time. I got a real warm and fuzzy when I saw Bernie Sanders get appointed.
If you got a warm and fuzzy, then that's a good thing.
I tingle up my leg, you guys. Seriously, that really, yeah.
I definitely like that. I mean, I think though, the issue, again, as far as messaging is concerned, with the negotiation part that Republicans kept saying over and over the 16 days of the shutdown, all the Democrats will negotiate, neglecting to account for the fact that they are already in the position that they were in because we negotiated. The budget number was $986 billion, negotiated amount there wasn't even a negotiation. The Republicans said, "Here's the number." Democrats took it. I mean, I think the Democrats failed to relay the message effectively. In fact, I heard more from the Republicans about non-negotiation than I heard about Democrats saying, "Here's what I've already done. I don't need to go any further." That's not how negotiations work. So, I mean, I think that they not only decide to grow a spine and just stand up for themselves and for us, I mean, they have got to be able to message more effectively, even in handling the Obamacare problem. Okay, you can call something a glitch so often. I mean, if you continue to call it a glitch, yet I'm inconvenient, that's belittling. Stop doing it. Just simply say, we screwed up, here's what I'm doing. And, you can give them all the political ammunition you need, but at the end of the day, I don't care about political fodder. I want you to fix the issue and be honest with the process. But don't sit there and be like, you know what, I'm sorry, we screwed up, but let's blame somebody. Just fix it. Like that skit from Saturday Night Live. Just fix it. I don't care about your crap. Just
like there are times for politics, and there are times for there is now a glitch you saw.
What?
And it's
I want a glitch czar for my webcam, Joe.
Yeah.
I also want a glitch czar for your webcam done, and it makes me very sad that I'm sure.
Because I put on makeup, you guys. I did the smoky eye for you guys. I did that. You got Rachel Maddow does her smoke. I did my smoky eye for you guys, and you not even appreciate it.
It's the thought that counts. I am visualizing it in my mind. It's very great. But anywho, on the and we are again back to the $64,000, 800-pound gorilla, whatever you want to call it, problem of the messaging. Even the three of us talking about the messaging on we've already compromised versus we just caved to them versus they're the ones that did not actually compromise. Ever. In my mind, and you still hear the right-wing talking point of, well, it's the Democrats' fault because we haven't had a budget in 5 years.
Right.
Well, let's talk about why we don't have a budget. Because back in March, April, the Republicans got off on their high horses and started screaming about this, and Senator, New York, help me out, guys. Starts with an S. Chuck Schumer.
Yeah.
Came out and said, we'll do a budget. You won't like it, but we'll do a budget, and we'll send it to conference, and we'll reconcile it, and we'll have a budget.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened? The House passed the Ryan Plan version 2.0, which is even worse than the original, because it keeps all the revenue in Obamacare, it keeps all the revenue in the fiscal cliff deal, and it throws out all of the spending and still turns Medicaid into a coupon and a prayer.
Right.
The Democrats took the same bill, gutted it, inserted Patty Murray's budget, and moved to send the thing to conference. Now, at this point, if you're obeying regular order, you send the bill to conference, it goes to conference, you thrash it out, you get a bill, you send it to both houses, it goes for an up-down vote, and it passes or it doesn't, and if it doesn't, you start the process again. But a bill will come out of that conference, period, end of discussion. This is the way the rules work.
Well, and also, if you're going to go by the Constitution, which right-wingers like to wave around so much these days, budgets are supposed to originate in the House. And Senate budgets and the President's budget, as a matter of fact, are just nice to have. really nice of them to do that, to put forth a budget, like, here are our priorities. But they don't even really have to do that. The House is supposed to come up with something, and they need to come up with something that's going to get voted on in the Senate and signed by the president. And their unwillingness to do that is the whole problem.
Well, because they keep passing the damn Ryan plan, which will never see the light of day.
The Senate for not, adopting that stupid budget that's never going to get through the Senate or signed by the president.
Which is why what the Senate did in April was essentially the good old classic Arizona approach of using a striker amendment of strike everything, use it as a pretty wrapper for the thing that I actually want to put in this bill, so the bill has technically originated in the correct chamber, and send it back. At which point John Boehner refused to appoint conference delegates, and at which point the Republican senators, led by Ted Cruz and Mitch McConnell, objected 19 times to sending that thing to conference. We are not here because both sides did not get along. We are not here because we didn't pass a budget for 5 years. We are here because we gave the Republicans exactly what they wanted, and they decided that it wasn't what they wanted anymore, and that they would rather continue to play brinksmanship for the next 9 months.
I mean, think about it in these terms. I mean, the party that didn't win is behaving as if they did. Think about that. Not only, I mean, again, as Donna mentioned a second ago, how much the right love to tout the Constitution. I mean, they are just negating the 65 million of us that voted for Obama and his platform. They're negating we want that, and are simply behaving as if they won not only the presidential election, but all the other elections as well, and just trying to force what their agenda is going to be going forward. And at the same time, what's also unfortunate is that Democrats are, in some cases, allowing it to happen.
Now, in some cases, we are allowing that, and it seems like lately, like, to piggyback off Donnie here a little bit, like, you have things happening, like Donna Murray getting some serious time with microphones. You have things happening like Bernie Sanders being on the conference committee. You have things happen like Nancy Pelosi on the floor beating her chest like a liberal in ways we haven't seen since that woman had the gavel. I mean, there is some real unified outrage at the Republican Party, and there's an emerging sense of...
she's the speaker again, because Boehner sucks at his job.
Yes,
I mean, you might as well continue to call her Speaker Pelosi, because she's the only one who can get votes.
She might as well be. But it's worth mentioning that, one, there is a wing of the Republican Party, there were, 80-some-odd of them, that did vote for a clean CR. We probably could have had a clean CR had it not been for the damn House bill that changed the rules and made it so only Eric Cantor could bring anything to the floor. Right. And I wonder if, given the position of strength the Democratic Party is now, relatively speaking, that we are fairly well unified. We came out of the shutdown fairly well unscathed, and Obamacare is creepingly more popular now, weird, despite the fact that the website doesn't work, that maybe we could sort of throw the dogs a bone, and instead of that broad brush paint all the Republicans as all of them are evil, 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 start to single out and name check the Tea Party, start to single out and name check the really crap Republicans. The real hardcore nut jobs in the House.
And also praise, I'm a firm believer in praise when somebody does something good. I don't care what party they're in. It's kind of like, it's like when we were talking about raising children before, like reinforcing positive behavior. So, for example, when we in Arizona, we got the Medicaid expansion. Despite this being a red tape, Jan Brewer said that she wanted the Medicaid expansion at the beginning of the year, and all the Republicans were pissed off at her about it, but her office got enough Republican votes, which combined with all the Democratic votes in the state legislature, were enough to approve the Medicaid expansion in Arizona. And I emailed every one of those Republicans who voted for the Medicaid expansion to thank them for their vote. And I don't like a lot of those people. I mean, I don't like 99% of what a lot of them stand for, but when they do something right, they need to be, yeah, absolutely.
And seeing that, I completely agree, because if you look at Jim Sensenbrenner from Wisconsin, on one hand, he's making awful comments about Michelle Obama and the size of her butt, and he's also the author of the Patriot Act, and he's also at the same time the same person that's fighting to get the reauthorization of the Voting Rights Act. And that's again. So, I mean, I applaud to that end. But obviously, I'd like to have him stop making comments about Michelle Obama's butt.
But we also have the guys like Gazer, like Franks, like Schweikert, like like some of the real
Yeah.
loony toony far right nut bar brigade of the House.
Right.
That is it valuable to start to make the argument that it's really not the Republican Party. We really don't hate all Republicans. We don't think you're all evil and stupid and out to destroy the world. It's just the Tea Party.
And I think, honestly, if something doesn't happen soon, I think what will happen is, I think there's two possibilities. One, it'll take years for the Republican Party to recover by trying to flush out the Tea Party of their group, or Republicans, or the more moderate ones, will start to switch over to Democrats and make the Democratic Party more right-wing itself. So I think if Democrats can start to stand up to make sure Republicans actually suffer for the mistakes that they've made, not suffer like they're going to die, but their party, their wins, start to be taken away. I think our party is going to be infiltrated by those who want to get away from the Tea Party.
I just think that if the Republican Party represented the interests of anyone but like rich white men, we wouldn't even be having this conversation about how to save them and what can we do to help them be better people and hold their hands and coddle them. I mean, think about it. If it were the Democrats acting this way, and I'm not saying we don't represent rich white men to a large extent, especially in Washington, but we also represent like single moms who make $9 an hour, right? And if there are giant rallies full of single moms, especially like non-white single moms making $9 an hour, and they were going to like memorials in Washington D.C. and breaking down the barricades and threatening park rangers. Do you think anyone would be interested in saving the Democratic Party?
No.
Seriously. Yeah, I just marvel at that that level of privilege and entitlement that certain groups of people continue to have in this country. It's really pretty amazing. But,
To me,
the good news is when our voters get out, we win.
Yeah. To me, though, that cuts a couple of ways. Like, for one, we are not the Republican Party. There will never be a reality we behave how they behave. However, we have had our share of problems with bat-crap Looney Tune brigades in our own ranks. Like, we once upon a time had the Dixiecrats to deal with, and we threw them out. Like,
and they're Republicans now.
Yes, they are. For better or worse, we've always had the Democratic wing of the Democratic Party has always been able to hold both the extremes of the ones that are too far, almost on the right wings, and the ones that are way crazy Looney Tunes to the left, to pull them back to the table and no, we need to actually win elections, we need to actually move policy, we need to actually have grown-ups drive the conversation, we're going to do things that make sense for the most people possible, and we're all going to move forward. We're going to take as much of the policies we can get, and we know it's not going to be everything, but we'll come back and we'll get the rest later.
Right.
They don't have that. They do not have a Democratic wing of the Republican Party because they are Republicans.
Yeah.
They have this sort of weird alliance that Newt Gingrich built back in the day that never should have been built in the first place between the religious right and the libertarians and the neoconservatives that has bred this insane Tea Party.
Well, that goes back 40 years, actually, with the Powell Memo, and the Southern Strategy, and the rise of like moral majority in the 70s and 80s.
Yes.
So, and then Reagan was their standard bearer, and he was the guy that really brought those elements together.
And if we're going to be the party of good government, the two-party system isn't going to work without two working parties.
Right.
It doesn't really do us much good to continue to have this party that can, in fact, go to Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, parts of Maine, parts of Wisconsin, parts of Minnesota, Montana, Idaho, keep going into all of these rural districts, that there are more rural counties now than there were before because of this concentration of people into urban areas, that we win these urban seats and we lose the rural ones because we don't look or sound like them. And they have to deal with this hard right flank that they don't seem to be able to get rid of. At some point, that hard right flank has to be gotten rid of by somebody.
Well, they have to be defeated. I mean, the urban-rural divide, it has gotten so stratified now that I don't know. I probably could count on one hand the number of rural districts in this country that Democrats could win. You know? And that's just how things are. But yeah, I think at this point, until they want to get their act together, just register the hell out of Democrats, win as many elections as we can, anywhere we can, and just kind of relegate them to a small regional minority party that, you know, isn't able to. I don't even think she can have enough to filibuster. You know, and I think it's doable. I think if things continue on, it's on the horizon. I mean, the demographics are clearly in our favor everywhere. They know that. That's why they're pushing all this voter suppression bullcrap. Because they know if you vote, they lose.
Yeah.
I guess I have a question for you guys. You know, with how extreme the Tea Party may be, how much none of us can stand how they function. They have gotten, for the most part, what they wanted. They don't care whether you like them or not. They don't care if you support them or not. They don't care. They are there for a purpose, and it seems, as far as I'm concerned, they are getting that. They have turned the country against itself and are making sure that vote results don't matter. The only thing that matters is what the Tea Party says. So my question, with that long read-in, is why isn't there something as truly strong and determined on the left? And should there be?
Well, when Occupy came out a couple of years ago, a lot of people thought that might be what you're talking about on the left. But the difference between Occupy and the Tea Party, the Tea Party was political from the get-go. It was an arm of the Republican Party from the get-go, and they very seamlessly, wefted their way into electoral politics. They had no problem with it. The Occupy people, they were in the right on a lot of things. They did, I think that the most important thing they did is they brought the conversation around to justice and inequality. But being of the left, there was a lot of mission drift, mission creep, and there was sort of a disdain for politics among most of the people, especially the leftist people there. I did notice, it struck me, I went to one of the Occupy, the big names, the first one they had in Phoenix, where, the organizers were all, oh no, we're not, partisan here. But, of course, they let the libertarians get up and give speeches. And I almost felt like, it was sort of an open mic thing, and I almost felt like going on stage and grabbing the mic, like, don't you people understand? Okay, first of all, libertarian is a political party, and libertarianism is the absolute antithesis of everything that most of you want. But I just get all irate. So I personally, that kind of turned me off to it. I never went back. I had friends that were still involved. So that's the problem, though, with the left. I mean, we have things, and it's supposed to be about income equality, and somebody's holding a sign that says Israel out of Palestine. Yeah. Because that has, what all to do with Wall Street or whatever. And that's, when then the drum circles and the,
50,000 messages problem of it.
Yeah.
And everybody has to, no, we don't do that.
Yeah, but I think it's something we have to accept, that we are a coalition. We're not a monolithic block. So we have labor, we have LGBT, we have, pro-choice, we have environmentalists, and we have all these different groups. And groups sometimes need to learn to, put their agenda aside and work together on one thing at a time. And I think the gay rights movement has been a really, really good example of how to incrementally get progress, but continue to push for progress on that issue.
Yeah, I still think with the Occupy Wall Street thing, I think it partially why I believe they weren't as successful as the Tea Party is because Occupy Wall Street didn't start off as being racist to begin with. 'Cause I think, and I don't mean that to be flippant. I think honestly, what drove the Tea Party was flat out blatant racism.
Oh, yes.
You know, so I think racism can make you do things that it's almost like being on steroids. You wouldn't have normally. In fact, there was an article Monday that came out that said that the Koch brothers had started to try to form the Tea Party and get it going in 2002, and it just never took off. And for some reason, when the black guy wins, now it becomes a movement. And I don't think the Occupy Wall Street or anything the left has to offer has anything that can inspire such a dramatic and fervent response.
Yeah.
Is what racism can do for you.
And I think part of why you saw that, but let's all go ahead and call the Tea Party what it really is, an art project of the Koch brothers. Because it's really hard to get people to vote for policies that close your schools, tear up their roads, take their food stamps away, throw them out in the street and leave them to die with no health care, unless you have something else that you can wrap it up in, like religion and racism. That's what happened there. And you get, Obama comes in and yes, like fake scary black man, whatever, now that he's big or scary. But you also had, the first time in a long time, the Democrats had come in and won everything. We had won the presidency, we had control of the Senate, we had control of the House, we had supermajorities, we had taken state legislatures that were never supposed to be ours. I mean, we flipped seats in that race that never should have been flipped. And you get the deep pockets of the Koch brothers freaked out. And at this point, it's okay, it's on. What is it going to take to turn this back? And to their credit, like they've gained that pretty well of using everything short of the kitchen sink, and maybe including the kitchen sink, to go ahead and it doesn't matter what kind of bullpucky lie it is, we're just going to tell the lie until somebody believes it. It's propaganda 101 of you just keep repeating the lie until it sticks, and that's what they've done. Yeah, I question if we can do it with the truth. I also question if we'll ever get to the point where we'll have something that resembles a Tea Party, not the Tea Party mentality, but that sort of Tea Party unification of message and purpose. Like we need our own shock troops out there in a sense that are willing to say really loud, inflammatory things that people are not really terribly comfortable in hearing, but it upsets them and it gets them to care and wake up and realize that there's a world out there. I do want to wrap this up. We got 10 minutes left on our recording time here. So, 2014, the House. Can we or can't we?
I think we can. And so right now, Joe, you and I talked last night about how there's 14 seats that are trending right now to be Democratic. I think what's going to happen, those 14 seats can remain vulnerable and waffling when you get into campaign season next year. I think that will help swing the tide in our favor. I think the other thing, we only need to pick up, 18 seats to do it. I think what will happen is if we can possibly, somehow by some stroke of genius and luck, get Obamacare to actually work, well, to get the website to work as the telephone to work. I don't know if they need to get a team of carrier pigeons or whatever to make this take off. But if that happens, I think, my God, I mean, the amount of swing votes that will happen into the Democratic favor, I think will be enormous. Because at some point, whether you hate Obama or not, you still need health care. And you can't sit and say that there's a party that you want to vote for that wants to